How's everyone doing today? This is Noah with the Life of the Zigs, coming back at you with another video on how to build a shiplap fireplace and redoing the shiplap fireplace that I currently have. So let's get started. Alright, so I just want to start off by saying there is another video on my channel of me building this original shiplap fireplace. I was pretty happy with it at first, however, over time both my wife and I agreed that it really closed off the room. And this is because we made it essentially just a big box. We didn't do any indentation to match the current fireplace, which we wanted to save. So we decided that the best course of action would be to take this all apart and redo it and make it how we want it. Also, part of the reason why is we were rushing. We had a baby due about a month from when I built it originally, and we were rushing to get things done. So if I could redo it, I would build it the way it is now. However, some of you may like this way, so if you do like how I currently have it there, go check out my other video and I show you and explain how I built that one. Alright, so as you can see, I am just taking everything apart currently. I wanted to reuse as much material as I could out of this fireplace, partly because we already spent all the money on it not that long ago, and it was all in good shape. So basically I'm meticulously pulling everything off, such as the trim, the shiplap, and even all the 2x4 framing behind it. I'm going to end up reusing basically all of it. The biggest pain in this was removing all the nails out of everything. I used pin nails to mount the shiplap, so every board had multiple nails that needed to get cut out of it, which I used a multi-tool and just sliced them off with that, which made it go by pretty fast, but still takes some time. And all the 2x4s needed to get nails out of it, which took some time as well. So with that being said, everything is demoed and I have all the 2x4s in the garage now. Right now I'm currently making my cuts and measurements to start some new framing for this fireplace. I decided that the best course of action here for this would be to frame it out in the garage and then bring in individual pieces of the frame in and set it in place that way. Just created less mess in the living room, and it allowed me to have all my tools in the garage where I needed them. So now that I have the bottom box built, I went and framed everything in place just by using 3-inch long screws. And like I said, I made my measurements before, framed it all out in the garage, and then put it all together around the fireplace there. This definitely was the easiest way to go about this. And if you are working around a fireplace like I am, you don't need to screw anything into it. It's all around it, so you're not ruining the structural integrity of the fireplace. Next step here is I'm going to build the 2 side walls for the fireplace. These walls are pretty skinny. They're about, I think, 5.5 to 6 inches wide. Like I said, we wanted that low profile on the wall to mimic the current fireplace and have that nice stained wood seating area in the front. After I had the sides framed up, I brought them inside the house and I lined them up and screwed them in again with the 3-inch long decking screws. I will put those link in the description down below for those screws. Yes, they're decking screws or exterior grade screws. I just prefer them over regular interior grade screws. They'll last longer if there's ever an issue. So the last part of the framing here is the front face of the fireplace. I decided to frame this inside. I made all my measurements and then cuts outside, brought the pieces of wood in, and then lined them up and screwed them in place. Did have to account for the brick that was sticking out that used to hold a fireplace mantle. So I had it about 1/2 inch to 1 inch past that, just to account for any errors I had or bends or weird things in the wood. Once that was done, I started sliding each piece of 2x4 in and screwing them in place, and then I made my measurements to build the box for the fireplace, mounted that about 6 inches above where the wood bench would be, and then finished out the framing. The next step here is hooking up that outlet behind the fireplace for the fireplace to have power. It is a 20 amp breaker with 12 gauge wire ran to that outlet, and that will actually continue up and feed the TV as well. It's perfectly fine. That fireplace, when the heat's on, only pulls about 9 amps, I believe, which is plenty for a 20 amp breaker and 20 amp line. Once you get that installed, it's time to start putting up the shiplap. When it's time to install that shiplap, it's super easy. I just use a pin nailer, put a couple nails on each side, and that's it. I don't use any glues or adhesives, and so far I've had no issues out of it. Also, remember to have a little hole for all your wires to come through for your TV. That's what you see right there. Later on, I'll put a cable pass-through plate on there to make it look nice and uniform. Continuing with the shiplap, just keep pin nailing it down. Thankfully, they're all the same length, so you just make it one cut. You know you're gonna have trim on both sides there to cover up any imperfections. So you don't need to be too precise with your cuts, but you still want to be kind of within a 1/4 inch accuracy. Now onto the front shiplap. I started to mount the boards with the pin nailer again. And right here I'm about to get to where I need to mount the box for the TV. This piece did break when I took it out. That's why it came in 2 pieces. However, I'm just using the same hole to install that media box, which I'm putting in right now. I really like this box. It just uses little fins to mount to the wall surface, or for here the shiplap. It doesn't need to mount to a stud or anything, which I like. And it has a built-in outlet in it, and it also has that cable pass-through, which you can see there in the picture. You do need to install your own outlet box into it. It does not come with that in the kit, as well as your own outlet and plate. But it's super easy to do, super easy to get, and it makes it nice, clean, and uniform behind the TV and when it's time to install your TV and get cables fished through and ran in. Since we're on the topic of cables, I would run as many HDMI cables, fiber optic cables, anything you think you're going to need in the future, Ethernet cables, as you can behind this, because access will be kind of hard to get to. So currently I am running 4 HDMI cables behind my TV and my fiber optic line for my audio. That's all I should need. I don't run Ethernet to my TV. I got perfectly fine Wi-Fi and force plenty. That's the max my TV can handle, and I don't see myself needing any more than 4 HDMI cables to hook anything up to in the future. Continuing on with the shiplap here, it's just a rinse and repeat process. Like I said, I was reusing all the boards I have previously used on the last Fireplace. That's why I already had all these cuts done. If you're doing it from scratch, again, it's fairly simple. Make your measurements, make your cuts. When it comes to around the Fireplace here, you will have some overlap from the cover for the Fireplace, so your cuts don't need to be perfectly square or anything like that. That's why you can see there's some discrepancies in my cuts here. It's perfectly fine. There's no issue with that. Also, while we're on the subject of the Fireplace, I do want to touch upon that you need to make sure that you put this on its own 20 amp breaker. I know I kind of mentioned that before, but I just want to stress that because it has its own heating element in it and you can run heat off of it. It will pull a decent amount of amps, and it could cause a breaker to trip if it was not on its own breaker. When mounting the Fireplace in place, I just used a 2x4 in the back and pieces of shiplap to bump it out. Putting that shiplap there allows that Fireplace to be perfectly flush with the shiplap, and then when that cover goes on, it just slides on perfectly and flush with the shiplap. So you basically don't even see a gap in between the Fireplace or the shiplap itself. Alright, so now that the shiplap's complete, it's time to start trimming everything up. I just used some 1x4 MDF board I got from Lowe's, or you get it from Home Depot or any other building supply store. I mitered all the cuts to make it look seamless, and I used that pin nailer to nail it all into place. When it came to the outside corner trim, I decided to use outside corner guard, or that's what they call it on the Lowe's website. I'll link it down in the description below. I just primed it, painted it, and pin nailed it in place. The last part of the framing I had to do was putting a 2x4 right there where the bench was going to be seated. I just screwed it in place, and then I took shims and I slid it under the 2x4, and that allowed for nice full contact of that 2x4 with the brick. I didn't want to glue anything to the brick if the off chance we ever wanted to take it off and go back to the brick fireplace, or we ever sold the house and that owner would want to go to a brick fireplace. So that's why I chose to use the shims here and not actually mount it. And once all the shims are in place, just check the level on it, make sure it's nice and seamless, and then you're good to go. The next step was marking out where the bench was going to be. I had to notch out the corners because I had that corner trim there, and I wanted to notch it out so I could push it up against the shiplap and it would be nice and seamless there. After getting that wood all notched out and ready to go, I needed to caulk everything. Caulking is an extremely vital step, and please do not miss it. I have neglected to caulk some things in the past, and when the finished product turns out, you always wish you would have just caulked it. Alright, so this is day 2 of the project. I'm mounting up the 2x2 for mounting the mantle that will be above the fireplace. And after I mounted that mantle, I started taping all around. I'm not a good painter, so I always heavily tape everything to get that nice crisp line. And then once you get all that taped down and around every single section that you want to cover up, I will always lay down some cloths or moving blankets just to cover up the floor even more in case we accidentally spill or little paint splatters. You don't have to worry about cleaning that up later. Alright, now it's actually time to start putting some paint up. I am using the Sherwin-Williams Showcase in flat white. I believe it's just the basic white that's already in the can. I didn't tint it or anything. I feel like this is a nice, vibrant white to really just highlight everything else in the room. And the nice thing about this paint is that it's very scratch and scuff resistant, and if you get a little bit of a stain on it, you can easily wipe it off and it'll look just like new. Also, for my paintbrush and roller that I'm using the Avanti brand, which is at Harbor Freight. I actually find that they work really well and do good at applying the paint and getting nice crisp lines. I'm using a 3/8 snap roller, which is a 4-inch size roller, and the paintbrush I believe is about 2 inches wide. Once the paint was dried, I got the TV mounted to the studs behind the shiplap, and then right here I'm hanging the TV, which I have my wife right there kind of guiding me to hang it since it's so high up. And obviously I can't see behind the TV. This is kind of tricky, so I definitely have 2 people if you're hanging a TV on the mount I have, which I'll have linked down in the description below. I do like this mount a lot, but there are definitely other mounts out there that may be a little better. Once you got your TV mounted, make sure to put and install all your HDMI cables, power cables, optical cables, and so on and so forth. I did not film that, however, it's pretty self-explanatory and everyone's TV is different. After the TV's up, I'm going to put the fireplace cover on here. Just give it a good wipe down. It could get a little dusty and dirty, and once you have that mounted, and if you see any dust or particles, it just gets annoying in my mind. So just have a microfiber cloth on hand to wipe it down. This is really easy to install. All you need to do is line up the little hooks on the back, slide them in, and it'll drop down and snug it up against the wall since there's an angle on those hooks. And then I'm going to come in real quick and just wipe down the front of it. Now I'm going to mount the fireplace mantle. This was later in the day. It was pretty late at night. I just wanted everything to dry on the mantle itself. Like I said, I had that 2x2 piece of wood, and it just slides right in there perfectly. It's already level, and then I actually pre-drilled 3 holes in the back of it. That's what's going to screw it down to that 2x2 piece of wood and make sure that it doesn't slide off and that it's nice and firm on there. Also, I should have a video out on how to build the mantle and the bench top for the fireplace in about 2 weeks from this Saturday, and it'll go in detail on how I built these mantles. It was very cheap, wasn't that expensive, and they turned out really good in my opinion. Now just going to quickly hook up that sound bar, turn everything on and test it, make sure it all works good. And since there's no issues, the last step is just mounting the bench top. When it came to mounting the bench top, I ended up using just Loctite construction adhesive. I do not show it here in the video because I wanted to let this sit overnight and just adjust to the climate, just because my garage was a little cooler where it was sitting. However, I just put a big thick bead of construction adhesive down all over those 2x4s and then set it back down on it, put a couple weights all over it, and then it sat nice and firm. With that being said, guys, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed learning how to build a shiplap fireplace as much as I did. Please, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, all the materials and tools that I used will be linked down in the description below. So thanks for watching, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.